2, 1.
And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report for today. It's Friday, February 1st, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son, Joe Hagmann. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, analysis, information you need to know in these perilous times. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us. Our home base is on the internet at homelandsecurityus.com. That's homelandsecurityus.com. And you can also watch us as well as we're simulcast live in high-def video on the Christians United Broadcasting Network. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us. Thank you for your belief and trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. Joe, welcome to the studio in this cold, frosty, and winter night.
Yep, got the sled dogs out and made my way up here again. And the dogs are better than the cars, it seems. And as we're going through another snowstorm,
this is a 3-dog night.
Yeah, and we got a lot of stuff to get into, as a lot of things are going on across the world and locally, nationally, that need attention. I'm surprised by a few stories that we're going to be talking about, but this is a free-for-all Friday, where we'll be taking your calls for most of the show. We'll start in the second hour, top of the second hour, with your calls. So if you guys want to call in,
line them up.
Do so, yeah.
Yeah, line up. On this Friday, the first day of February, it seems like, there are a lot of things that happened since last night's show. It seems like things are happening so rapidly. I was on Coast to Coast briefly for the news segment last night. Got a chance to talk to George Norrie for a little bit. It just seems like things are taking place at breakneck speed. One thing I'd like to bring out before the show starts is something that Judy McLeod from Canada Free Press, our sister affiliate to the north, if you will, had written about. Folks, I really think that we had talked earlier. She had called and we talked, and this is something I almost missed. And she brought this out and wanted, we talked about this. And this could very well be a hinge moment in time. The article that I would direct your attention to, again, on CanadaFreePress.com, Enviros respond to Obama's inaugural call with history's biggest climate rally. What Judy McLeod is saying here is that the far-left environmental groups will be fomenting societal chaos, change. They're heading full speed for a gathering they describe as the largest climate rally in U.S. history. This is scheduled for February 17th of this year, actually 16 days from now. Now, the reason this is so important, and I'm just going to briefly say this, and folks, you can read the article, definitely comment on it, spread it around, because this is parallel to what Obama had said in his inaugural address. This is a call for civil disobedience by the left, by the progressives, by the Marxists, by the people that are committed to disrupt the United States. You've got to really read the article, think about it, give it some soak time, and then look at it through the prism of Marxists, of the Marxist agenda. When you do that, it takes on an entirely different, you'll see how it actually how this will actually play out, how this could be this hinge moment in time that'll kick off this Marxist revolution in this country that will actually go pit these Marxists against the Marxist slash progressives against the conservative constitutionalists.
Yeah.
Because look at the groups that support this rally. There's a lot of them. And once you start looking into that and understand that they have nothing to do, a lot of them have nothing to do with climate change, you'll see the underlying agenda there. I just wanted to bring that out, CanadaFreePress.com, Judy McLeod, that article, because I think this could be a hinge moment in history.
Okay, and I just read part of this article, and I'm going through the list of these companies and backers of this group, and I'm going to look for some connections, some non-governmental connections to people like Soros and
they're there.
Yeah, the other elite. And what this is the biggest climate change rally in U.S. history will take place in Washington, D.C. At noon, Sunday, February 17th. And they're calling for, they say, is pulling out all the stops and calling for peaceful civil disobedience. Now, this is an Obama agenda, part of his new climate change revamp 2.0 in his second presidential election, where he stated that this would be, one of the issues that he was going to make sure was a top issue for him, and that he was going to take care of. And don't forget, they've been with the guns. They are calling people, bringing in the CDC, possibly using guns as a mental illness. But for years, going back 2010 and further, different doctors from different parts of government and private industry say that if you deny climate change, man-made climate change, then you are also possibly mentally ill, and you should. The scientist recommends inpatient treatment for those who do not believe in the United Nations sustainable development.
It's once again the code words. It's for the children, and isn't this something we see? His inaugural address, him saying we have an obligation to shape the debates of our time, and so on. And of course, he throws in to do so, meaning not to address this particular issue, would be unconscionable. To do so would betray our children and the future generations. So it's always for the children. So those are the code words that you've got to really watch for. Anytime you hear "for the children," know that what follows is not for the children. And I think Judy does a really good job pointing this out, and especially by naming the groups and by identifying the groups, which she drilled down into this particular into the story and drilled down and got the names of the groups. You'll see it's not about the children. It's not. It's about defanging our military coalition against nukes. And by the way, this also has it's got a North American flavor to it.
A United Nations flavor to it. Just look, if you go back to the United Nations guidelines, recruiting religious leaders as agents of change for one world religion, they talk about the importance for faith-based organizations to be agents of change, recruiting different religious leaders to help create a conductive socio-cultural environment impacting our behaviors, attitudes, and practices. And this has all to do with a one world economy, climate change discussions, the sustainable development, the UN agenda. And this is an interfaith partnership that has been launched and in the making since the 1980s.
It goes back generations, decades anyway, and way back into, we could say generations as well. When you were talking, Joe, it reminded me, do you want to read that email you got, that glowing email, or? No?
I'll do that later.
Okay.
I want to start off with some good news. I would like to watch Piers Morgan if he's on today. If he covers a story, his head will explode. Newtown, Connecticut, calls for armed officers at school. The Newtown Board of Education wants more armed police officers in the towns for elementary schools. after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Wow.
Last night, they decided to ask the town to approve the request to include an additional full-time Newtown police at each of the elementary schools in next year's budget. They say, our parents are demanding of us that things are made safe and secure and certain measures are put in place. So we're being very thoughtful, they said. Several police officers have been stationed at all Newtown schools since December 14th, and they apparently will be there until the end of the year and in the budget for next year.
Really?
So, yes, armed guards at the schools instead of gun-free zones should make his head explode.
Well, honestly, I mean, look, we use guns to protect our jewelry stores, our courthouses,
Yeah.
why not use them and responsible people to protect our most precious assets?
And
Children.
it is responsible, I say, but after the anti-Second Amendment campaign launched by CNN and Piers Morgan, pretty much calling anybody who calls for this type of, having armed patrolmen at schools, making sure things are safer, basically is advocating for more murders. I'd like to see his response to this, if he even addresses it.
Well, probably the easiest thing would be not to address it, but if he does, it would be interesting to see what.
I mean, would he start calling the parents who have children that go to school in this town? People who are out of their mind crazy. They seeing as how they just had such a huge tragedy related to guns. They're calling the parents are actually calling. Are they going to be called terrorists now? Are they going to be called extremist and racist?
That does put him in a kind of a pickle, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I wonder if they'll continue their anti-gun control or their anti-gun, pro-gun rants.
That would be interesting to see. I don't know. I don't know. By the way, I want to welcome a group in a diner. Believe it or not, we have actually there's a group of people in a diner in Warrensburg, Missouri, listening to this program live. I want to say hello to you folks listening via the internet. That's in Warrensburg, Missouri. I think it's Dell's Diner. I'm not exactly certain, but hello to you folks. Welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, and of course, welcome to all of those listening on to this live broadcast this first day of February.
We have things going on in the Middle East as there has been protesters and people killed during clashes outside of the presidential palace in Egypt. I'm going to play a short clip here on what is happening there. This is from an international news agency. 52 people were killed in the last week in clashes in Egypt, most of them protesters.
Now, Egypt's main opposition group rejects President Mohamed Morsi's call for dialogue as chaos continues to prevail across the country. Opposition leaders took their stand amid fresh clashes between security forces and protesters in several cities. One more protester has been killed and nearly a dozen police officers injured in the capital, Cairo. Thousands of demonstrators also flooded the streets of Port Said, Ismailia, and Suez in defiance of a nighttime curfew. 2 protesters have reportedly been shot dead in Port Said, bringing to 52 the number of people killed in the nearly week-long violence across the country. Amnesty International has condemned what it calls the unnecessary use of lethal force against demonstrators. Meanwhile, opposition leaders have called for a nationwide protest on Friday to push for what they describe as the unfulfilled goals of the revolution. Well, of course.
All right, and there's the initial report on that. A BBC report goes on to state Egyptian protesters clashed with police at presidential palace. The police outside the presidential palace in Cairo were met with protesters after a week of violence in which more than 60 people were killed. And there were more than 50 injured. There were also other protests in several other cities. The protesters accused Islamist President Mohamed Morsi of betraying the 2011 uprising, a claim he denies. And it goes on to say not only are there people being killed in the protest, but there are sexual assaults. At least 25 different women have been sexually assaulted amidst the protest in Tahrir Square. And there are things going on now which were happening 2 years ago with Mubarak in power, where Obama called for his removal due to the protesters dying.
Correct. So, well,
yeah, and
I mean, how do you answer that?
Well, I have audio clips of what he said about Libya and Muammar. This is we're going to go here to Obama a few years back, talking about the same thing happened in Egypt, happened in Libya, where Al Qaeda, Western-backed, U.S.-backed, extreme Islamist rebels, or Al Qaeda, were sent in and funded by our government in order to create an uprising in Egypt, Tunisia, and all throughout these countries in the Middle East, and we're seeing it in Syria now. And this is what Obama said to Gaddafi about killing innocent protesters and what his solution was.
Go ahead and play this, because I do have something to say about this.
In the face of the world's condemnation, Gaddafi chose to escalate his attacks, launching a military campaign against the Libyan people. Innocent people were targeted for killing. Hospitals and ambulances were attacked. Journalists were arrested, sexually assaulted, and killed. Supplies of food and fuel were choked off. Water for hundreds of thousands of people in Misrata was shut off. Cities and towns were shelled, mosques were destroyed, and apartment buildings reduced to rubble. Military jets and helicopter gunships were unleashed upon people who had no means to defend themselves against assaults from the air. Confronted by this brutal repression and a looming humanitarian crisis, I ordered warships into the Mediterranean. European allies declared their willingness to commit resources to stop the killing. The Libyan opposition and the Arab League appealed to the world to save lives in Libya. And so at my direction, America led an effort with our allies at the United Nations Security Council to pass a historic resolution that authorized a no-fly zone to stop the regime's attacks from the air and further authorized all necessary measures to protect the Libyan people. 10 days ago, having tried to end the violence without using force, the international community offered Gaddafi a final chance to stop his campaign of killing or face the consequences.
All right, folks. That was Barack Obama on Libya, and here's what really everyone needs to know and understand. And this is something that I feel that we've done a good job in laying out in the articles at Canada Free Press and HomelandSecurityUS.com. By the way, I'll be putting together all of these articles about Benghazi. The reason for Benghazi, the reason for the lies, the reason for the deception, the reason that none of the lawmakers have gotten anywhere on Benghazi is because what we're seeing play out here with respect to Obama, Hillary Clinton, that the entire regime and the regime changes across the Middle East, whether it's Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and all of these, this so-called Arab Spring, is because this is the run-up to World War III. Now, don't forget the Albert Pike Mazzini letter that we need 3 world wars, or that there will be 3 world wars. Now, some people, I understand some people believe that is not true. That's a hoax. That's conspiracy talk. That's nonsense. But the bottom line is that was written by somebody, and even if you don't believe it's genuine at its face, you've got to understand what it's saying. So, without regard to whatever you might believe as the authenticity or legitimacy of that, understand this: the Obama regime and the globalist bankers together are working toward bringing to fruition a 3rd world war. That's not going to start necessarily in Iran, but it's going to start in Syria. It might end in Iran. The reason why we're not getting to the bottom of Benghazi, and we will never get to the bottom of Benghazi, is because the plans are still in place.
What do you mean? Didn't Hillary, tell all in her testimony?
Yeah, she told all. She told nothing, and her, and she's got blood on her hands, as does Obama. But here's the entire deal right now. We are being pushed toward World War III, and if you go back to the article that Lemmings on the Precipice of World War III, if you reread that article that both Joe and I wrote back in, I believe it was September, and posted on our website, that was information that came from a intelligence source, and who said that they are still pushing forward with their plans. And that also was the first time chemical weapons were referenced anywhere in the media, to my knowledge. And lo and behold, the chemical weapons information just had come out. The leaked email that we referenced yesterday with Bill Salas had come out, and we were proven correct. Once again, if you believe in the authenticity of the leaked emails. So there are too many there are too many connections, too many dots here being connected. The point is this: we are being pushed, forced, dragged, pulled, whatever you want, headlong into a third world war to be fought on behalf of the globalist bankers. It involves Syria. Benghazi was a window into that, the lifting of the veil into that plan, and that is why you'll never get we're not going to get the information. And why not? Well, why not some the Republicans on the House and the Senate, why haven't they drilled deeper into this? Because it is a one-party system. The two-party paradigm, Republican Democratic system, is done. It's gone. It's over. If you believe it, you might as well believe in fairy tales. You might as well believe in the Easter Bunny. It's over. It is over. They are all working for the same paymasters, which are the globalist bankers that fund both sides of the war, and they treat us as nothing more than cattle, chattel, whatever, cattle, sheep, things to be herded, useless eaters. This is where we're at. This is where things are good. And once again, the plans have not changed. Now, Mark Levin had a great 5-minute monologue. If you heard it, it might do you well to hear it again. Whether or not you are a fan of Mark Levin, Mark Levin speaks in this 6.5-minute monologue the truth. Now, there are a few cuss words, if you will, minor cuss words. So if you can bear with that, because he speaks with passion and he speaks the truth.
Right.
So
this has to do with what's happening in Egypt and what the administration is doing.
But it all fits together.
Yeah.
With it, what Joe played earlier from, what you played earlier, Joe, on the
Obama's talking about
Libya,
Gaddafi killing protesters and how unacceptable it is, and the actions they'll take. Yep.
So this all fits together. But we were attracted, both Joe and I were attracted, and we must have gotten 15, 20 emails about this today alone, asking us to play this on air. So we will do it. Just take a listen, because it's a warranted, his passion is indeed warranted, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So go ahead at your convenience, Joe.
What the hell are we doing? What the hell is this president doing? Sending F-16s to the regime in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, which hopefully will be overthrown by the military there. Sending M1 tanks, other defense items. Did you ever think you'd see the day? I mean, it's unbelievable. The regime in Egypt is our enemy. It's not an ally. There was a vote on the floor of the Senate today, thanks to Rand Paul. He proposed an amendment, quote, to prohibit the sale, lease, transfer, retransfer or delivery of F-16 aircraft, M1 tanks, or certain other defense articles or services to the government of Egypt. It failed. And the vote was 79-19. Do you know what that means? That means a number of Senate Republicans joined the Democrats and refused to take steps to block the transfer or sale of F-16s and M1 tanks to the Muslim Brotherhood Islamo-Nazi regime in Cairo. There were 19 Republicans, only 19, who said no. And I don't want to hear this crap about we give the president his leeway to do this sort of thing. So sick of that. This president is lawless, and he's out of control. We give him nothing. 19 Republicans in the Senate. That's it. What the hell's happening? Now we back the Muslim Brotherhood? And then, of course, our dear friend Michelle Bachmann and Louis Gohmert and 3 other brave members of the House of Representatives ask questions about the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration in our own government, and they're treated like pariahs. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated our government. It's called Barack Obama. No, he's not a formal member. He's a sympathizer. There, I said it. Prove otherwise. Meanwhile, you want to look into Obama's soul? You want to look into his soul? Well, look at his soul. You know what I see, Mr. Producer? I see Chuck Hagel. What kind of a commander-in-chief would nominate somebody like Chuck Hagel to be Secretary of Defense? I'll tell you what kind of commander-in-chief. The kind of commander-in-chief that arms the Muslim Brotherhood Islamo-Nazi regime in Cairo while he's hollowing out the greatest military force on the face of the earth under his direct command, the United States military. That's what kind of commander-in-chief. Chuck Hagel, who's a sympathizer with the most radical elements in the Middle East and an Israel hater. So why would a president nominate somebody like Chuck Hagel? Because the president is Chuck Hagel. He's a sympathizer with the most radical elements in the Middle East, and he's an Israel hater. That's why he nominated Hagel. So Chuck Hagel, making a fool of himself today at his confirmation hearing. And he'll still be confirmed, I bet, because the Democrats are lockstep. Even the Jewish Democrat members of the U.S. Senate, they're lockstep. The Anti-Defamation League, their lips are sealed. AIPAC, Hagel once called them the Jewish lobby. Their lips are sealed. They're all a bunch of cowards. It's the righteous Gentiles who are speaking up. You want to hear the truth? You'll hear the truth on this microphone. It's the righteous Gentiles who are speaking up. It's the conservatives who are speaking up. And Chuck Hagel is not just a problem for Israel. He is a huge problem for the United States military. This man believes in unilateral disarmament, whether it's convention weaponry or nuclear weaponry. And he's on the record, and there's not a damn thing he can say to reverse course. You know who supports this nomination the most, ladies and gentlemen? Our enemies. Because they know Hagel's going to be put at defense to carry out Obama's wishes, which is to slash the Marines, slash the Army, slash the Navy, slash the Air Force, and slash everything else. Slash conventional weaponry, nuclear weaponry, R&D, to drag this nation back so we are not the number one superpower on the face of the earth. The communist fascists who run Red China, they're thrilled about this nomination. The fascist Putin in Russia, he's thrilled about this nomination. The communists in Cuba, and Venezuela, and other parts of our hemisphere, they're thrilled about Hegel's nomination. As are the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, in Cairo, the Gaza Strip, most of Lebanon, and in the rest of the world. They think Hegel's terrific. So does Obama. Now, what does that tell you? Not a single Republican in the United States Senate, not one, should be voting for this man. They should be sending a message to Obama and the world, once and for all. Draw a line and mean it. We will not allow this president, through this defense nominee, to destroy our military. He's worse than George McGovern. He's worse than Jimmy Carter. He's the absolute worst. We're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to accept another al-Qaeda attack on our territory. The answer to Chuck Hagel is no. I vote no.
Folks, that was Mark Levin. Now look, the Chuck Hagel nomination, I totally agree with him. I agree with his passion. I agree with the fact that this guy is the wrong person for the. I mean, all wrong. You cannot to put him in this position would be one of the most one of the biggest mistakes. I don't believe his nomination is going to fly. I just don't believe it. But this just goes to show. I believe this is an exhibit that this regime that's in the White House wants to take us into, wants to decimate our military. They want to pander to the Islamic fascism that is taking place across the world. They're the architects behind the Arab Spring, which is, but Mark Levin doesn't go far enough here. See, this is part, in my view, that is. But this is part to bring in this one world governance. Once again, we must not forget, we must not be just limited in sight, in vision to what Mark Levin is saying. Mark Levin has got one piece of the puzzle, and he drives it home really well, and I love it. I love him for it. But behind it is the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the one world order people.
The continuity of agenda.
Yes.
Go back to the George Bush speech given, first George Bush 1.
Yes.
Talking about the New World Order, where he says, we're bringing about a one world order, a new world order, and he says when we're successful, and we will be, we will have a globe that is basically envisioned by the UN founders, their creation of a one world order, is what he goes on to say in that speech.
That's right.
The United Nations.
Well, correct.
Dreams and goals, not
Americans.
Right. And we know what the United Nations is about.
Yes,
we went over it and have done numerous shows about the one world religion, the one world government, the one world currency, all being done in secret by international bankers, rogue elements of our government working together through continuity of agenda, through presidential administrations here and abroad, and they are doing their best to bring it about. The crash of the dollar will be the trigger point, in my opinion, where we won't have a defense against their new system. At the same time, we see John McCain and Chuck Schumer are moving to force Americans to use biometric ID for employment. Senators John McCain and Chuck Schumer said on Thursday they back a plan to force all Americans to use a biometric Social Security card as part of a comprehensive immigration reform scheme that will be used to legalize millions of illegal aliens. I'm for it, McCain told Politico Playbook Breakfast earlier this week when asked if he supports a super Social Security card that would have some sort of biometric thing like a fingerprint. We want to make sure that employers do not hire people who are here illegally, said Schumer, who has pushed for biometric employment cards in the past. The only way to do that is to have a non-forgeable card. Because right now you can go down the street and get Social Security card or driver's license for $100. That's forged. They go on to say, as part of this The article goes on to state American citizens will need to submit to the government fingerprints and other biometric information if they want to be legally employed. In other words, citizens will not be required to get governmental permission to work. They will be obligated to submit biometric data to the surveillance state.
Right.
National ID cards at the databases behind them compromise the cornerstone of government surveillance systems that creates risks to privacy and anonymity, notes the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The requirement to produce identity cards on demand turn citizens into participating in their own surveillance and social control. Submitted biodata will make it easier for the government to accomplish geolocation tracking use, video surveillance, and facial recognition software. Moreover, it will allow the government to deny employment to people it designates as political troublemakers, otherwise known as terrorists. And I mean you, listening to this show.
Us. We the sooner we realize, folks, that it's all about, it's not about grabbing the guns.
No,
it's
not
about
money.
coming after us.
It's about power.
It's about, correct, it's about power. What's at the root of all of this? What's at the core of what we're seeing? Well, when you reduce it to its lowest common denominator, you're right, Joe, it's about power. It's about this globalist agenda. The gun grab is just one part of it. And people like Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, instituting this, which will turn out to be, by the way, gun confiscation. It's been verified now. He's just a stooge. If you look at just Cuomo in New York State, or just the gun grab, the gun confiscation, if you just look at that as the only agenda, you're not seeing the larger picture. The larger picture is this push for this one world order, as George Bush talked about on 9/11, 1990, 11 years before 9/11 of 2001. And yes,
was it 91?
It was 1990, I believe. It was because it was 11 years to the day before 9/11 of '01, and people will kind of chuckle, and laugh, say, "Oh, well, numbers don't mean anything," that type of thing.
And there were people before that attack happened that said, such things would happen because we still have the guns, because we still have the freedoms, because we are the last stronghold to resist against a one world order.
Exactly, and Joe named the program today, and we both did actually. We were talking about it. What's the name of the program tonight? Surviving What's Coming?
Surviving the Times.
Surviving the Times. Okay. In order to survive, we have to understand what game that we are playing, or what game we find ourselves in. Or it's really not a game, but what we'll liken it to a game. We have to know what we're into. What board game we're playing, or where we're at. So it's so important to be able to survive. Knowledge. I mean, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is part of this, but then go ahead.
It says my people perish for lack of knowledge, and I believe it is spiritual knowledge.
That's right, too.
It is
yes.
Not the knowledge of this world. It has nothing to do with figuring out the ways or the evil's ways that these men carry their agenda out. In fact, the opposite, I believe that digging too deep into this stuff, getting too into researching the New World Order, their systems of control and evil, leads you away from the Word, what you're supposed to really be doing. And it talks about this, in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 16, and it says, speaking of them in these things, in which some things are hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable rest, as they do also in other scriptures, unto their own destruction. So that's the lack of knowledge. And,
right.
And the things we need to focus on are not of this world. The solutions that we need to look for are not in this world.
Well, and to a large extent, I agree with you, because you can get caught up in the game itself.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can become totally misguided of things of this earth. That's very true. But I also believe too that for practical survival, if you are to be the person, if you, the listener, are to be the person appointed, if you are the person that's taking on the responsibility for protection of your family, it's important to understand where we are in the game, or in the midst of what's taking place. But yes, that knowledge with which you speak of, Joe, and this is something that I do feel, and I'm growing in my strength in this. Yes, you've got to reinforce. I mean, you at some point you've got to balance it out with the spiritual component. Otherwise, you're lost altogether.
Right, and it's not through listening to pastors, preachers, our show, anybody else's show.
I'm glad you said that. That's right.
In 1 John, chapter 2, verse 26 or 27, it says, "But the anointing which ye have received of him abideth in you, and ye need not that any man teach you, but as the same anointing teacheth you of all things, and is truth, and is no lie, and even as it hath taught you, ye shall abide in him." And it's saying simply, don't listen or don't learn from other man's teaching. The Spirit of the Lord is in you.
Go
and
right
by
to the
reading
source.
His Word and having a relationship with Him, you will learn.
That's right. Go right to the source. In other words, don't put your faith in any one man or your exactly. You go right to the source, and the source is the Word, and then that's what we have to. I mean, I believe that.
Right.
And yeah,
I mean, that is the most important thing we can be doing for ourselves right now. Aside from that, judging what seasons we're in, what times we're in, where are we going from here? How long do we have? Those are questions that we won't get an answer to until the time is there. But
right.
What we can do is watch, always watch, never, be, what does it say? Be sober, be vigilant, and stand and wait, and keep your head high, for your redemption is near.
Right.
And we see the signs that are all around us, the wars, the rumors of wars, the signs in the sun, the sky, the stars. I don't know if you guys heard about the comet Ison that is coming in November 13, the end of this year, 2013. They say it'll be brighter than the full moon. Some say 15 times brighter than a full moon, to be seen in broad daylight.
And comets are always, or have been, known as harbingers of doom, or omens of doom, or bad times.
According to some, yeah.
Yes, according to some. So, it's, or even harbingers of change. Regardless, the signs in the skies. I would say that's a big one, if that does play out to be true. And didn't they say something about that coming relatively close to the satellites? And
no, that is there is the asteroid.
Another asteroid.
February 15th, and they're saying there's not a chance that it's going to hit Earth, but it could impact satellites and or communications. February 15th, an asteroid about half the size of a football field will fly past Earth closer than any man-made satellites.
You checked with Stan Dale on that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And he said from the time he looked at it last till the new calculations of the new numbers that they put in there, that it is going to come, it'll be about 12,000 and a change miles away from Earth. Now, the satellites orbit anywhere from 25,000 to 35,000 miles from Earth.
No. It can't be. 25 to 30,000 miles from Earth?
If maybe a little bit, 22,000. I'll have to
really?
check my
I thought it was.
my facts.
I didn't realize it was that far. I thought it was not that far. I thought it was low Earth orbit that these satellites were in.
Yeah. What was it last year? There was the asteroid. What was it? Y55 or Y225 that was really close. I think it was last year, if not the year before. But either way, this is the closest.
Regardless, yeah.
Asteroid that has been measured by scientists since the start of the study of science.
Wow.
And it'll fly closest to the Earth, closer than any object in the history of recorded science.
And that's in 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now. So just be once again, signs in the skies. All of these things we have to. I believe that we have to look at. Just take a few steps back and look at the bigger picture, and that's what we're trying to do with this program tonight. Is look at the bigger picture here. What's going on, so we can survive the times that we're in.
Right.
And
we don't know what dangers, if any, the asteroid will pose to the Earth or its satellites. Nor can we control that if we wanted to, if we did know.
Well, I mean, you could wave it on in, right? We'll be out there. As you're listening, listeners, what we'll do is we'll be out. We'll actually, go out on the do a remote, and we'll be waving the asteroid in and giving you a blow-by-blow description. Yeah, But speaking about the signs of the times, I just want to touch on something here that I'm not sure if people were aware of this. It has to do with gold and silver. I don't know whether you saw this or not.
Is this about the 43 million order that's supposed to be placed tomorrow on gold?
Did you have something on that?
Yes, I do. I got to find it here.
But I think
43 tons of gold stand for February delivery on first notice day. Let me see. Gold run. This is from silverdoctors.com.
This, by the way, I believe, and both Joe and I were talking about this before the show, we believe that this is probably the signal that, though, if there is one signal that a collapse is really close, this is perhaps one of the biggest signs. And you're right.
It goes on to say, gold run, 43 tons of gold stand for February delivery. First day notice.
Right, first notice.
Today was the first notice day for February delivery in gold, and as usual, we had a waterfall raid in gold to 1655. The cartel MO has long to raid gold and silver on option expirations, as well as the first notice day to help prevent longs from standing for delivery. They're manipulating.
Look, to read this would be, because this is kind of written in this financial language. I had a hard time reading this. The bottom line is this: there's just a heck of amount of gold being.
January was set a record for the most gold and silver purchases in a month.
Yeah, which should tell us something, shouldn't it? It should tell us. And by the way, a lot of these places, countries even, are not going to be getting their physical delivery of gold, because they don't have it. We don't have it. So there's going to be some
we have Germany calling for their gold to be removed from the Fed and delivered to them or given to them, which many say, many respected economists, such as Gerald Celente and I think Peter Schiff, said there's nothing to give them.
Right, and do recall that it was January 28th that Germany said that they wanted their gold, the Federal Reserve was holding. It was supposed to be something like 1,500 tons. They wanted it repatriated to the Bundesbank, Bundesbank, whatever. But the Feds told them basically, no, we'll send you 300 tons over 7 years. The reason? Well, they don't have it. It will get worse.
Yeah, and also other financial news, two interesting pieces. One or three here. Gas prices headed up again. They say, hold on to your wallets. We're in the middle of a gas price spike, and experts say it's only going to get worse. CBS 2 out of Chicago learned several factors might push the price in the area to over $4 a gallon. It's now become a task most people dread pulling up to the pump. This article goes on to say, and on top of that, coming out today are job numbers. 8.5 million Americans left labor force in Obama's first term. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released job numbers in January, Friday, showing that non-farm payroll employment increased by 157,000, and the unemployment rate rose to 7.9%. Lost in the headline numbers was another rise in the number of people not in the labor force. This now stands at a staggering 89 million, up from 80.5 million when President Obama took office. This means there are currently 8.5 million more Americans not in the labor force than just 4 years ago. Forget all the other numbers. This continued explosion of people not in the labor force should be a tremendously concerning, as it represents an obstacle for the government to ever balance the budget without drastically rising taxes on those still working. And what do we see? Obamacare is going to cost $20,000 per family for the poorest families in America.
Well, and isn't that just fabulous? Once again, this is the consolidation. This is all about consolidation and control. With Obamacare, I have to tell you kind of a funny story that does relate to what you're talking about, the price of oil, the gas, and so on. I was in the supermarket yesterday, and folks, I'll tell you something. Honestly, I think that if our elected leaders, I don't care if you're in the House or if you're a state house, or I don't care if you're even in a local position, if you don't know the cost of groceries, then you've got no business leading our country. But I was in the aisle where the peanut butter was. Have you seen the cost of peanut butter lately? I was going to buy a jar of peanut butter, and I looked at it, and I out loud I said, "You've got to be kidding me!" Well, there was an older woman next to me that kind of looked at me and said, "Pardon me?" And I said, "No, I was just blown away by I think it was a 16-ounce jar of peanut butter for $7.99. Wow!" And I said, "Come on, I was looking at her. I said, "What's going on here with the prices of peanut butter?" And she looked at me like I had two heads, of course. But it's but folks, look, the groceries that we're paying for, the gas that we're going to be paying for,
the gas that we pay for now. It's $3.60 here, $3.59. If there is one thing in surviving the times that I would hope that everyone does is when you go to the store now, go ahead and pick up an extra jar of